Mumbai. But then you're not really targeting mostly the middle class, you're targeting the richer class.
So you have to have parking for them.
Yes. Like, just to give you an example, I don't know if I told you, but you know, when a car company came to India, I think it was Chevrolet, they tried to reduce the cost by removing some stuff from the back seat. Like from the behind seat, they try to remove, because in America or in Europe, people don't care about the behind seat. But in India, if you are successful, if you are rich, you have a driver, you have a chauffeur. So he has to sit in the shitty front car, and the person who's having it sits in the behind seat. So that model completely failed because they tried to use the same strategy as US and India, but they had to completely customize it. And then Kellogg's, the cereal company, they completely failed in India. Because people don't eat breakfasts with cereals, they don't eat breakfast with quick milk. Because in Indian families, your mother or your wife makes it by spending 1 hour, 2 hours. And then, you know, actually cooking up for the whole family, and they sit and eat. It's not the other way around. It's not where you're quickly going to an office and you quickly put some cereals, you put some milk and you eat. It's a completely different mindset they have to target. And surprisingly now, Kellogg's is in biscuit business in India. They changed their whole business to biscuits, not to cereals. There are still some cereals, but very tiny.
I would like to ask you one question also.
Yes, sir.
About the marine industry. We have a company dealing with marine and software. So kind of, what do you think about this niche in the local cruise or something?
The thing about Indian shipping industry is that most of the shipping industry there is either Norwegian or Danish or American.
So it's already occupied.
So it's already by the Europeans. We don't have any big successful Indian marine company. What we have is a huge naval force, but not civil thing. And most Indians don't go on cruises. It's mostly foreigners who come to India on a cruise. Indian outward cruises is not a concept which they even know of. So it's not something, you know, which is that huge in India. And the people who operate the ferries are really illiterate, poor people who, you know, come from the fisherman class. So they are the ones who operate it. It's not big companies operating it. So you're not talking about any technology company. They're trying to get into just an Indian company. They are better off dealing with Norwegian companies or Danish companies who still operate that stuff.
Do you know what kind of companies?
Bergson, and there's Merck's. M-E-R-S-K.
Yeah, Mars.
So the biggest
Yeah. Those are the ones operating from there. And the thing about most stuff going out of India is that they put them on the ships like that, on that production, or through planes. Yeah.
And let's say about factories, comparing in percent, 50-50, 20-80, how many factories there are Indian based and how many are foreign factories?
It's mostly Indians.
Mostly Indians,
Mostly
locals,
Indians.
and there is nothing to do, let's say, this is, we have mother company and we are just small company, and our bosses are, let's say, in Europe, in the States, and another. So
that thing happens, but mostly for industries in cars, in high-end technology. But when it comes to fashion products, which is the biggest produce in India, like Indian fashion and garments are the biggest, one of the biggest in the world. And for food, it's basically subcontractors. Like companies don't open up their own factories in India because it's just a different place to operate. They work with Indian companies who already have factories, who are already manufacturing, and they work with them. So basically they give them a contract, they get it done, and they send it back. It's always like that. So even for most of the production companies you're talking about, it's not usually the mother company opening up their own factory in India. It's them working with an Indian factory already operating there and trying to make something out of it.
Is it also because it's mostly like you were saying, it's relationship based?
Relationship based and who you know. Like if you want to get a lot of permits, if you want to work with, like the government, then if you're an Indian, it's a whole different story than if you're a foreigner, because you know how to work with those people. You already know the agents. You already know
But so, like, how come if you, let's say, if you're just white, and that gives you like
an advantage.
an advantage? So, like,
it also gives you a target of being forced for higher corruption. Then you're also the target where, if I pay 100 rupees, you pay 1,000 rupees. Because you're supposed to be the
so
rich
getting
person.
ripped off if you're doing business directly.
Absolutely.
That's why you need an agent
For most of the things, yes. And even as an Indian, you need them to, because they have the relationship with the right people.
So you don't go directly to the right people, right?
You cannot get to the person directly, to the right person, because, like even the dean of a university in India makes like what? 500 euros a month, maximum? Or maximum 1,000 euros a month. That's the complete maximum, which for the best university. So 500 euros a month, that's what, less than what I pay most people here? And that kind of person, he also wants something in return for the money he is giving for the company business. So if he's giving something, he wants a kickback, but he cannot go and openly ask it. So if he comes to me, he knows that, I'm handling your business, then he can tell me, not you, that yeah, I want something out of it. So most of the times, that's why you need to deal with agents. Because, in return, they get gifts from them, in return, they get some money from them. So that's the issue with corruption and through trust. That you basically go to a person who can go to that person, talk to him, and, he can get something out of it, you can get something out of it. It's always that situation.
Win-win,
It's
as they call it.
Yes. Not for you though, because you end up spending more.
Okay.
Because that kickback also goes from your pocket.
Let's say going back for the industry. On your opinion, at this moment, owners of the factories, they are looking straight positive to the IT system.
It's not just IT, Indian manufacturing is huge.
No, I mean for modernization. Let's say I quite often heard from China people. They said, what for I should buy your machine? I better hire 20 Chinese people, they will fabricate for me cigarettes instead of spending for the machines.
In India, we have higher costs than China. Indian labor cost is not as cheap as China, and as much as people like to think, in India we still don't use slave labor, like those child labor or anything that doesn't work. It's still a higher cost, so companies spend on modernization for sure. I know tons of people who invest money to technology to reduce the costs.
So they are looking positive on this side.
Yes.
Better I spend today this amount of money instead of spending after 2 years.
If you can convince them that your thing will save them money. Because most of Indian business people you will talk to are pretty pragmatic. You will still need to build a trust with them, you will still need to build a relationship, like you will need to become their friend. And in India you mix your personal life and business life. You start becoming their friend, you start knowing their family, you start knowing their children, you start talking to them, you start sharing stuff with them. You have to open up yourself and then they open up to you. And then, yes, they definitely buy stuff. They definitely modernize. And most of them will be pretty pragmatic about it. Because I'm not sure if you know about Susitikimas. It's an energy company which is one of the biggest in the world right now. And then there's one called Flex Tube. About 80% of the plastic tubes in which your toothpaste comes, like the toothpaste you do in the morning, that is made by an Indian company. then most foreign companies, they actually buy it from that one company. And then you have ball bearings, which you use in cars. Mercedes, BMW,